All right, so we are joined from Winona, Minnesota, all the way up in the land of the lakes by my high school classmate, Madison Central alum, Chris Reilly. We are have a room full here with us at Velma Jackson High School. This is for our computer science engineering class, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central, Ridgeland, Germantown, Shirley Simmons, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So
Nice.
thank you so much for joining us because obviously Thern makes winches and cranes and other tools. And we've been talking about simple machines. But your path wasn't the regular path. And I know you're going to talk about that because we do really like to talk about different options after high school. And I think it's really cool what you did. So I'm looking forward to hearing about this. And I know we'll have some great questions. So thank you again so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. And just to check, can you see the screen that I'm sharing right now?
Looks pretty cool.
All right, man. Well, right on. Well, thanks for having me to come in and talk a little bit about my career path. It has been varied and has been wide, but like Greg said, I graduated from Madison Central High School. Grew up in the Jackson Ridgeland area. My sister was a graduate of Murrah High School, and I lived in Mississippi from about the time I was 3 until about 2 months after I graduated high school and joined the Navy. If you knew me in high school, you probably knew that I wasn't the greatest student on the planet. I didn't quite know what to do with myself. And so I walked into a recruiter's office one day and just asked, I said, hey, will you guys give me money and tell me what to do and make sure I have food if I join the Navy? And they said, yes, sir, come this way. We've got a spot for you. My first 2 years out of the Navy, I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and I went to school for 2 years, which was really, really great for a guy who was not super great at school to be sitting in a classroom another 40 hours a week. But I couldn't be happier that I did because I got a really interesting skill set out of it. So overall, my career path was I spent 2 years in school right out of the Navy for the Navy, and then ended up graduating top of my class in nuclear power school. So they asked me to stay on board as an instructor for 2 years. So up to my 4-year point, I was still just on shore duty and on instructor duty. And then from 2004 to 2008, I deployed on the USS Rhode Island, which is a Trident submarine out of Kings Bay, Georgia. I did that for 3.5 years. We did 6 strategic deterrent patrols that were anywhere from, I'd say, 35 up to about 100 days on deployment length. And then at the end of 2008, I went back to instructor duty for 3 years and finished out my time in the Navy before transitioning to a civilian nuclear power plant that I worked at for a few years, and then transitioning into a business career where I work in product marketing now for Thern. But then kind of at the end of my military time, and as I transitioned into the civilian sector, I started going to school, and I got a whole bunch of free college. And for anybody that's thinking about joining the military, I certainly like to discuss those college benefits. So I'll talk a little bit about those. Being in the military was pretty cool, and I would say that every military platform has its own kind of mission. Trident submarines were part of our country's nuclear triad. So our country has nuclear weapons that are operated by various branches of the armed forces. Some of those nuclear weapons come out of silos in the ground. Some are dropped by airplanes. And the most survivable leg, should nuclear war to break out in the world, would be the submarines hiding under the ocean that you can't even see. So planes can be shot out of the air. They can find our missile silos, but they cannot find our submarines. So when I was in the Navy, I was a nuclear machinist mate. So I joined the Navy, and I'd say in the first couple months of school that I went to was pretty basic. This is a hammer, this is a screwdriver. And I don't know about you guys, but I was raised by a single mom and a big sister. So I just kind of laughed along and pretended like I knew what a hammer and a screwdriver were for when I really didn't. But I certainly know now. If you look at the top half of this screen here, it's kind of the back half of a nuclear submarine. The compartment on the left-hand side, there's the reactor compartment, which contains the nuclear reactor and the steam generator. And then the spaces aft of that towards the screw of the submarine is kind of where I spent the vast majority of my time. And it's just a bunch of equipment back there. There's pumps, valves, heat exchangers, large turbines that produce electricity, large turbines that give the ship propulsion. And all of these things require heavy duty maintenance and training in order to operate. So I picked up quite a bit of knowledge and skill when it comes to pumps, valves, heat exchangers, air compressors. I could probably, go work at any power plant or any kind of equipment manufacturer company with just some of the technical skills that I picked up. We have chemists in the Navy, radiological controls, maintenance programs, training programs. So not only do you learn how to operate this equipment, but you learn how to take it apart, how to put it back together, how to use maintenance procedures, how to use tools. And then kind of on the left here are some things I picked up when I was in the military that I would say employers look for a lot, but don't always show up well on your resume. And that would be things like being loyal, showing up to work on time, working well on a team, understanding how to delegate authority and take on responsibility. We have courage. We can meet deadlines. I can follow a set of instructions or a YouTube video like nobody's business. And these were all things that we just did in the Navy all the time. And that employers, really, really like to look for. So, I would say almost every job in the military has a comparable technical civilian counterpart. So, if you worked on an aircraft carrier and you were launching planes all day, you could go be an air traffic controller. I worked in nuclear power plants on submarines. I went to go work at a commercial nuclear power plant. So all great experiences, technical skills, personality traits and stuff that employers really look for. All great things that I picked up while I was in the military. And then the last part, one of the main reasons I joined the military is because I didn't have any money to go to Heinz. I didn't have money to go to Holmes. I was going to either be working off student loans or I was going to do something else. So I joined the Navy because I knew there was a bunch of money in it for college. And I would say my last 3 years in the Navy, I went to night school, and then probably 4 or 5 years after I got out of the Navy, I hold associates, bachelor's and master's degrees, all in business. And then I did some postgraduate work at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, which is an Ivy League school up in Pennsylvania. That was a really great experience. And then the University of St. Thomas, which is a college here in Minneapolis. I did some marketing work while I was there. And I can't emphasize this enough. None of this cost me a penny. Yeah, I spent probably, I've got, I'm married, I have 4 kids, and I spent, I can't tell you how many nights typing term papers with one hand and holding a sleeping baby with the other after I got off the night shift. And, but these were all benefits that are just sitting there. And I know a lot of veterans that don't use their post education benefits. And I think it's just a shame, because this is probably close to $100,000 in just free stuff that the government gave me for doing my time in the Navy. So it was a really great experience. And I kind of took my education that you see here, that's all business related, and I transitioned out of nuclear power. So when I was getting out of the Navy, I didn't necessarily want to go work in nuclear power, but there's so many well-paying jobs out there if you've been doing it for 13 years that that's just kind of what I did for a little bit until I got some business degrees and was able to kind of make a transition into a couple of other business roles. So and now I work at Thern, and we make winches, we make davit cranes. If you guys are familiar with the big ball in Times Square that drops on New Year's Eve, that's actually a Thern winch that raises and lowers that ball. So that's kind of our.
Well, we looked at a couple of videos. I mean, it's everything from the small stuff to the big stuff. It just like I said, we've been talking about the simple machines, and it's just these little things that make the jobs that much easier for whoever's doing them. And that's literally what Thern makes.
Yeah, that's right. We have customers, in every facet of the world. One of our biggest customers is the wastewater business. Actually, if you were to go to a wastewater treatment plant, they have Thern davit cranes and Thern winches that are picking up pumps and mixers and all types of stuff all day long. But
and lifting spaceships, you don't think about that kind of stuff. Stuff like that has to be moved, and something has to be made to move that.
Yeah, we sold SpaceX a couple of big winches last year that are for recovering. So they launch rockets into space or whatever, and eventually it falls back down to the ocean. They need a big winch to pull it up onto a boat. And then we're working with a project on them right now on something. They won't even let us. They won't even tell us what it is they're working on. They just said, "Hey, just make us the big drum that winds the wire. That's all you need to know." And we said, "Okay, whatever it is." They're an interesting company to work with, but a hard company to be a supplier for, because if you are late on something, they will yell at you, and Elon Musk will threaten to show up at your facility and all kinds of stuff. So. Yeah, and that's about all I have for in terms of my career path and education. What else would you guys like to talk about?
Well, I do have some questions from the students, but I had a few things. Just talking about first on the military side, because obviously that's a great choice for so many young people. Because especially with the rising cost of college, so many people are like you said, I don't have a stellar ACT score. My family can't afford to take on this loan. I don't have the money to pay out of pocket. And just because you go to the military doesn't mean you can't go to college. And I think that's a big misnomer. And also, the military is not just kick down doors, blow stuff up, and let's make a movie like on TV. Now, if you want to do that, they can find a place for you. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to be Top Gun, you can do that. But the majority of the jobs are support jobs and transportation jobs and technical jobs, and you're not going to find, at least in my opinion, better technical and engineering training anywhere in the world than the United States military. And instead of paying, they're paying you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And there are even opportunities. So you can go to college, have the military pay for it, and then join up afterwards. There were several programs while I was in where they would remove you from your job, keep paying you, then send you to college. And then so you would essentially do like a 3-year rotation where your only job in the Navy was to go to college. And then you would come back and have some additional duty as an officer after that. And so either options is a really, really good way to go. The service academies are hard to get into. I tried to get into the Naval Academy. I was not accepted, but those are all great routes to go. The Naval Academy is one of the top engineering programs in the whole country.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because if kids are interested in engineering, they see the engineering programs at Mississippi State, which is a great program. Jackson State has a new electrical engineering program, and also some of the out-of-state schools, and they're great. But also, you're going to be looking at some cost involved unless you're making a 35 on the ACT. And these companies, these engineering companies, these tech companies, they're looking more for people that have the skills and the experience, probably a little bit more so than the people that have the degrees. Now, we're not trying to steer people away from getting the degrees. If that's the path you need to take, obviously go get it. And especially if you have any type of scholarship, that's going to save you money. But if you have that doubt and, maybe you want to get out of Mississippi like you did, I mean, that's so cool. You're up there in Minnesota, someplace I've never been. And the Navy led you to that. So even if it's not the Navy, the Air Force also is very tech driven. So I just want everybody watching now and watching later to, get that as an option. At Madison County Schools, you went to school with me, we didn't get these options coming out. It was pretty much black and white. But we want these kids to know there are multiple options coming out of high school, and the military, especially on the technical engineering side, is a great way to go.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And you hit the nail on the head, man. There are technical skills all over the place in the military. I mean, you think about it, a Navy vessel, it's a big piece of metal run by a bunch of electronics and a bunch of people. It's very sophisticated. It's the top-notch government contractors like Lockheed Martin and those types of companies that are building the equipment that sailors have to maintain and operate. And look at what the Navy invested in me. I mean, I was in the Navy for 2 years and all I did was go to school. And so the Navy, and all the branches of the military really take the time to invest in people, because the job that our service members do is very important. It has to be done correctly and it has to be done precisely each and every time. So yeah, great technical skill sets. And there's other stuff to do in the Navy too, man. Sometimes people join the Navy to see the world and be a cook, and then they go to cooking school when they get out of the Navy, man. There's just
they may be a cook, but they're visiting 11 countries while they're doing it. So it's it really is a great way to see the world in the Navy, more so than any other branch as far as the travel. My uncle was in the Navy, served in the first Gulf War in Kuwait. So and he was a doctor. So if you're interested in a doctor, that's something. But I do want to talk about Thern because obviously you just looking at the website and looking at the videos, they're making some very important equipment now. Obviously, we talk about technological advances. That doesn't mean the robots and the computer skill and the computer bleep stuff like on Star Wars.
Yep.
Anything that makes a job easier. And I think that's really what Thern does. They create tools to make working and lifting and constructing and moving things as easy as possible. So where do you come into play when it comes to the engineering and the technological advances of these products?
Yeah, good question. So I work in product management. I'm currently the company's only product manager. So kind of what I do is I sit in between our sales and marketing folks and our engineering folks. And I kind of talk in between these two groups, which is a really good job for me. I have a strong technical skill set and I'm a people person. If there's one thing that I did instructor duty for 7 years in the Navy, so I really like to hear myself talk. But so I go out and I talk to customers and I talk to our salespeople and I keep an eye on the competition and I see what's up and, hey, what are the products that are out there and what could we do? And then I try to talk to end users and say, hey, well, what trouble are you happening? How easy is this to lift? What if there was another product feature? And I kind of bring all of that information back to engineering and we try to develop new products. So, we've had several iterations of new products. One of the biggest technological advances that equipment in general makes these days is kind of the ability to remotely monitor equipment or to see it from other places, so can we learn things from our customers by logging into it, a dashboard and be able to see, how much is this winch running and how much weight is it lifting and how could it be more efficient and what can it do better? So we certainly, try to stay on the forefront of technology. We've kind of been picking things up and putting things down for tons and tons and tons of years. So there's kind of some really old engineering principles that are always at play.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're always going to need a lever. You're always going to need a pulley. You're always going to need an inclined plane. So, I mean, all that stuff's not going to change. Just the materials and the size of it may change.
Yep. That's right. And, there's an infinite number of combinations of way we could put our products together. We do a lot of specialty engineering. So, if a customer comes and looks at our website and says, hey, I saw some things on your website. Maybe this might work. Maybe that might work. But what I'm really looking for is this. And so we have a customs engineering group, a guy named Jeff Wilkowski that seems to know everything about everything. And we just kind of let them put their heads together and they take a bunch of bar napkins and sketch this stuff out. And then we have our own in-house engineering staff that kind of, does all the CAD modeling and the prototype generating and all that stuff. And we have to test these products and we do, R&D testing in-house, which takes a whole lot of technical know-how to do, those types of activities properly. And then eventually we have to figure out how much it costs to make us this product so we can price it and sell it appropriately. At the end of the day, we're here to make some money. We're a small privately held company. So, things don't get too intense like some of the big Wall Street giant companies that I've worked for. The owner of our company is also the CEO and it was started by his grandpappy and he loves the company and
Awesome.
It's a pretty good place to work.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I like to ask our guest about because you said all the R&D, the testing, it is infinite in engineering how many times trial and error occurs because and I can speak for the other teachers that'll see this later. The main thing that we have with these kids is when we build something, we're putting something together, it gets too hard. I quit. It can't be done. How often does your engineering team actually get it right the first time or your R&D team get it right the first time?
Almost never. I can guarantee. And so, we kind of go into projects and we just have the wherewithal to understand we don't know what we don't know. So, if we don't have a product like this yet and we're designing something new, we try to understand everything about it beforehand. We try to design it right the first time, but it never goes right the first time. So we typically have 2 to 3 iterations. We'll make a prototype, we'll play with it and we'll be like, oh, this thing is so, it's so far from us being able to sell it to a customer at this point. But then, we'll go through round 2. We'll feel kind of good about it. And then we'll send it out to a customer and say, hey, could you play with this and give us some feedback? Then he'll send it back to us and say, whoa, boy, you guys really missed a mark on this. And then we'll do more changes, right? And that's okay for us. Sometimes it's disappointing when you feel really good about a project to come back and realize, oh, geez, now we're going to still have so much work. But, we have a saying where I work, and that's just to fail forward, right? So if we keep trying, we keep adding, you just fail forward, hey, we didn't hit the mark this time, but we're 75% of the way closer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point too, because in the engineering design process, I know that's basic engineering, but you can take it to where the point where you're right, and you can say, okay, I'm right to this point. Let's take it from here. It's not always starting all the way over.
Right.
In you guys' case, it could be a type of material on a cord. It could be the size of the lever being wrong for the size machine. So it really can be something very small that is a small fix that can, in y'all's case, make you tons of money.
Yeah, and I tell you what, one of the most recent projects that we had, we actually it was for a capstan winch, and we didn't sell a product like that at the time, and we knew there wasn't a lot of choices out there, so we bought what we knew was the most popular version of our competitors, and we just reverse engineered it. Well, we took it apart and we were like, man, there's 20 things about this thing that really stink and are terrible, and so we just did away with those. So we took somebody's existing product that had not been redesigned or really looked at, in years and years and years. And it is selling like hotcakes. Like you're absolutely right. We didn't reinvent the wheel. we made a couple of tweaks here and there and gave the users what they were asking for. And it's working out really well for us.
Yeah. Now, before I get to the students' questions, you know, if somebody is interested in getting into this field, obviously now, I mean, and again, you know, it just makes me mad. You know, all the stuff that these kids have now, we didn't have in high school. You know, we have the engineering academy over at Ridgeland High. We have the engineering robotics academy over at MCTC for our VOTEC students. But if somebody's interested in getting into this field, what do they need to focus on? Because obviously, we're getting older. We're not as technologically savvy. We're having to learn new stuff. So what do these kids need to learn if they want to get into a similar type career?
Yeah, if a technical career working at a private enterprise is something that you're into, anything involving technical skills, computer skills, understanding the basics behind machinery, electricity, equipment, and just kind of how those things work, is really valuable. I tell you, right now we're down multiple members in our engineering department, and between engineering and then like the trades we have at work, like welders. Good Lord Almighty, if somebody would open a welding school in Winona, Minnesota, I would be so excited because we make things made of steel in the factory where I work, and we need a lot of welders to do so. And so it seems like we're always down welders, we're always down engineers, and we're always down designers. So understanding how to take anything apart, how to put it together, and understanding really how it works, and any type of coursework you can do in that arena is really, really valuable these days. CNC programming is another thing that's really valuable, not just to be a CNC machine operator, but just the principles behind how to program a robot that's going to do a task for you is incredible.
Yeah, and that's skills that these kids can learn now in high school as sophomores, juniors, seniors. And I think I'm also glad you brought up the trades, because right now at Holmes Community College with a 20 on the ACT, you can get your welding certificate for free.
Jeez.
100% tuition free. And like you said, these menial jobs are being done away with, but these skills like welding, when it comes to making these machines, are just a premium right now. And if you can learn to weld, I'm sure a place like Thern, you have a welding certificate, they'll train you and have you do it the right way. So the need for welders is not going away anytime soon.
It's not going away. And even we just got a brand new fancy robotic welder at work. And so a couple of folks at first were like, oh my gosh, Thern's going to buy robots and replace us at work. No, man, that robot needs a person to operate it, and that person's a welder. And so we took a guy who's in an existing welding cell. We sent him to a school to learn how to operate this robot. And so now he just kind of changed jobs. He went from being a welder for 20 years from us to now being the lead welder that supervises some guys and operates this welding machine. So even as technology changes in trades such as welding, there's still jobs available.
That's awesome. Well, I do have some questions from the students. I'll get to as many of these as I can. This first one is Justin Clerk. He's a senior, and this is a great question.
All right.
He asks, does the material that you use affect the performance when you manufacture it?
Yeah, absolutely it does. So we use a couple of different materials right now, but we have kind of two competing projects going right now, and it's a small davit crane. One is made out of just mild steel, and we're trying to make another lightweight version out of aluminum. And so for like the same material dimensions, we'll say, so if we make the crane the same size and shape, one out of steel and one out of aluminum, the steel crane will be 3 times as heavy, have 3 times the weight capacity, and also 3 times the weight. So we have customers who like our cranes, but they want to put it like up in a wind tower. So I want to take this thing up 200 feet. I want to put it in the nacelle of a wind tower, and I want to use it to raise equipment up and down. But this crane weighs 300 pounds. Like, I need something else because I'm going to have to a guy carry it up piece by piece. So we're making an aluminum crane, but the trouble we're having is that a steel crane has much less deflection than an aluminum crane. So the aluminum crane, before it breaks, is bending like this, right? And which would concern a customer just by looking at it, right? So we can't have a crane that bends too much, but I can't put so much aluminum in it to make it strong enough that I wouldn't be able to afford to make it. So it's a real balancing act. So yeah, the material absolutely matters. And then other materials, 3/16 stainless steel or 304 austenitic stainless steel, we sell those to customers who are going to put cranes near water because that doesn't corrode like mild steel. But it has basically
what a jigsaw puzzle. Good Lord.
Yeah, there's a lot to material selection. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, I'm glad somebody's thinking about that. That's a great question. This is Brenda Escudero. She's a senior, and she asked, After the military, what was your main motivation to go to college?
Yeah, for me, so my mom didn't go to college. My dad went to college, but not a lot of folks in my family went to college. And I think for me, um, I think most people that knew me just kind of thought it was not in the cards for me. So there was a big part of me that wanted to go to college for me, just to say I did it. But also just the job opportunities. And for me, nuclear power, great skill set, very valuable. If something happens to me at Thern, I'll get a job at any nuclear power plant in this country and make a bunch of money. I probably won't be too happy. But I wanted to get out of nuclear power. And so I couldn't change the fact that I had 13 years of nuclear power experience and no other business experience, but I can change my education. I can't change the past experiences, but I can change my education. So that's what I worked on. I had applied for a lot of jobs in businesses, but I basically had a business degree and no experience. So I went and got more business degrees because it's what I could control. So, for me, I wanted to move out of nuclear power. I did what I could do to affect my own resume in a way that I thought was beneficial. And I wanted to work for a business.
Yeah, and especially if once you serve your country, you've earned that right to get it for free. So why not make the most of it? It's just like you said, there's military people who don't use it. Now, granted, some of them don't want to go to college, that's fine. But if it's there, why not? I mean, if something's free, why say no?
Right. That's right.
I'm with you on that. This is Jacayla Page. She's a sophomore, and she asked, "What is your favorite thing to make or design?"
Favorite thing to make or design. So I tell you, we make basically two types of products: winches and cranes. Cranes are very simple. It's basically a piece of metal like this and a piece of metal like this, and you bolt it together and it holds some stuff. But winches are a pretty interesting thing to design because every parameter that you change on it, affects it. How big around the drum is affects things, how long it is, at what angle the rope's coming off. So it's just kind of it's always like a puzzle when a customer calls with a special project that you have to design something that's going to work for them. And custom designs are interesting because they take a long time and they're very expensive for the customer. So getting it right is important because they pay you a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously the engineering side is important, but when it comes to the business side, it's got to be right, and you got to be able to deal with the customer. Just got a couple more. This is Layla Young. She's a senior, and she asked, "What drew you to the Navy as opposed to another branch?"
Yeah, good question. I did talk to some of the other branches, but like Greg said earlier, there's lots of jobs that are in the military. One of those jobs is kicking down doors and hiding in the mountains and all these things. And that was not really for me at the time. I didn't want to say I just wanted to get somewhere in the military and hide. To be honest with you, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I joined the Navy. I just knew I probably wouldn't be in the desert, really hot, somewhere. And I don't know. I think the recruiter was just like the nicest. I mean, it could have been. I think at the time in Ridgeland, Mississippi on Highway 51, the Marine recruiter and the Navy recruiter office were like right next to each
They're
other.
on county line now, but it's still that way.
Yeah, I could, could have wandered into the other one, but I don't know. I felt like the Navy guy wasn't lying to me, and I didn't want to end up in the desert. So submarines were nice and cool, and they paid me a little extra money to live on a submarine.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to get away from home, you want to see the world, it's definitely not the worst idea in the world.
Nope.
I just got one more from the students. This is Destiny Smith. She's in 10th grade, and she asked, what is your favorite part of your job?
The favorite part of my job is probably, I don't know, I would say people. Businesses, you can do whatever you want in a business, hire people with engineering degrees, hire people that got this skill and that skill. But at the end of the day, I think businesses are successful because of the folks that you hire and their attitudes. And so, I have a lot of opportunities to go travel with our salespeople. I'm probably on a plane a couple times a month, and I'll go to either a customer site or go travel with some of our salespeople or anything. So just and I kind of touch every single area of our business, because once we start designing a product, we got to make sure it's designed right. We got to make sure our supply people can buy the parts to make it, that our planning people understand it. And so every different facet of the company I'm kind of involved with. So I like that. I stay kind of a jack of all trades. I stay real busy. Kind of all roads lead back to me. Sometimes people can't find the answer. Sometimes call Chris. He probably worked on it at some point. So just the fact that, well, one, I don't have to stay cooped up in my dark home office all the time. I'm actually about 2 hours away from our factory. So I work from home about half the time and I travel the other half the time, which I think is super great. A lot of people working home for more these days. For me, my wife's a stay-at-home mom. And so me working from home on occasion so she doesn't have to get 3 other kids in winter gear so that she can take one to school is like way better for her. And I like traveling because I like sleeping in hotels, which I don't get a lot of sleep around here with 4 kids. So
makes perfect sense. Now, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. But before we go, I think it's important that, you grew up right here in this same area where these kids are. You grew up, you said yourself, you were raised by a single mom and older sister. There's a lot of people and a lot of kids that have that same situation, but yet, you graduated Madison Central, you got to travel the world, you got to see everything in the country, you served our country, you got 3 degrees, and now you're living in Minnesota. So obviously it can be done. So if somebody is watching this and they have a similar situation, what can they do to kind of do something along the lines that you've done?
Man, I would just take it one step at a time and understand where you want to go. For me, I didn't want to stay in Mississippi forever. So step one for me was, well, how can I get out of Mississippi and get somebody to pay for me to do it? So I joined the Navy, and then, I knew that there was going to be life after the Navy when I was in the Navy. And so I started planning for that. I started working on my degrees, and I just take it one step at a time and understand where I want to go and what I need to do, to get there. I walked out of my mom's house, almost a month after I turned 18, and I haven't had to call and ask for money or do anything else since, man. Just one step at a time. I knew where I wanted to go, and I just did the things that I needed to do, and I stayed out of trouble, man. And here I am.
Incredible story, and just so incredible what you're doing. And, in any veteran, we're always going to say thank you for your service. And, it's a great path, super cool job, and a super cool company. And it's amazing all the things you're doing. But Thern.com, and you guys got some great YouTube videos of some of the stuff y'all are doing. And I'll share that with the other teachers. But again, thank you so much. Chris Reilly, Madison Central alum, all the way from Winona, Minnesota. Thank you so much, my man. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Yeah, go Jaguars.
That's right. See you, Ben.
All right, see ya.